what is unique about Hebrew culture? Like, what is the most unique aspect as far as what we tell ourselves about ourselves? What is the most unique aspect? And that answer is what's called nivuah. Right? Nivuah. The idea that that's what Lo Nevim and Masbnei Nevim and the idea that we had 1.2 million Nevim, we had a prophetic culture. The culture itself was built upon the idea of nivuah. Now, I'm not going to get into what nivuah is exactly, but what are the three preconditions to nivuah? The conditions to have a Nevi. In nivuah, shoah, and there can be no nivuah unless the person is one. Chacham, wise. Ashir, rich. V'gibor, and strong. Might. In other words, what are the aspects then of our culture? There have to be those three aspects. We have to be both wise, we have to be strong, and we also have to be rich. Now, Western society emphasizes the rich. Our role, is to gather in the sparks of truth that are hidden in different societies, different cultures, what are called the 70 nations of the world, right? Which is the multiplicity of the different puzzle pieces, or different ways that mankind can be expressed. It's typographically referred to as the 70 nations of the world. That's why we have 70 barim that we sacrifice in Sukkot, that's why there's 70 nefesh, Yaldu Mitzrayim, 70 neged that, 70 anashim b'seretrin, 70 against the 70 Motoram. And our job is actually to imbibe and to go in and to be this kind of bridge between this specific culture and something higher. In other words, we're supposed to be Memlechet Kohanim v'Goy Kadosh. What's a Memlechet Kohanim? A Kohen is someone who serves a public. To serve that public, you have to have a connection with that public. And if that Jew does not have a strong Jewish identity, he goes overboard and loses himself in trying to attach himself to that host culture.
Instinctively.
Right, it's something that's very much a part of it. That's the idea of next week's actually parasha, where the prophetic identity is also about tikkun olam, fixing the world, putting those 70 nations that were broken apart in Migdal Bavel, putting them back together. Like in Migdal Bavel, we were, all mankind was one, right? One language. What happened is that it was dispersed into 70. That oneness didn't important. That form of oneness didn't important because it was it was uniformity and not unity. And so the Migdal Bavel fell, and mankind was dispersed. And then all of a sudden comes on the scene a guy by the name of Avraham. Right? Abraham's job is now to pick up those 70 nations and put them back together. But put them together in a different way than they were put together in Migdal Bavel. Put them together in a way of unity and brotherhood of mankind. And you can count the nations, there are all the nations mentioned. There's 70 nations here, and Am Yisrael was made to be nation number 71. It's Begoim lo yitchashav. Begoim lo yitchashav doesn't mean that we shall not take into consideration what the Goyim say. What it means is that we shall not be counted among the Goyim. All of the nations of the world are 70, and we're nation number 71. We're not really a nation. We manifest as a nation in history in order to perform our role. There's really oneness in the world. And we have to put these pieces back together. And that's what said to Avraham Avinu, what does it mean? It doesn't mean that they shall be blessed by you. What it means is that the nations, lavrich means to take, like for example, a vine from a grapevine, and if you stick it into the ground, then another grapevine will pop up. That's called havacha. So when Hashem says to Avraham, that means the nations of the world shall be planted inside of you and shall come up as a new vine. And in that way we're all one. But there's a temptation in that mission. That mission that's the Hebrew mission. How are we supposed to accomplish our mission? How are we supposed to bring Tikkun Olam? How are we supposed to unite all of humanity? All the names of the different families and the tribes and the genealogy, and like all these, the names you read really fast and you never like know what they're saying, and you just read it fast because this guy begat that guy and that guy begat that guy, and all these. What is the Torah trying to teach us? Okay. First of all, let's assume that's trying to teach us something, because there's a lot of people out there who will say, nah, it's just, like a compilation of ridiculous stories. No, it's trying to teach us something. If it's trying to teach us something, what is it trying to teach us? The answer, what it's trying to teach us is the Torah is like having birth pains. And the birth pains, like the mother's wriggling and trying to do what? Give birth to the identity that will be called Israel. Okay? The identity that's going to be called Israel. And we can see it, for example, I'll just give you an example so I know it's true. When are the people of Israel born? How many tribes are there? How many children? 12, right? So what you can see is if you look at the tree, I'm not going to show you all the places, but you can look at the tree of the genealogy as it goes like, bless your faith. This guy begat that guy, that guy begat that guy, that guy begat that guy, and then all of a sudden, we have like brothers, like for example, Edvil, and Edvil has 2 children, Peleg and Yoktan, right? Peleg becomes the father of the antecedent of Abraham, but Yoktan has 12 children, and they're all mentioned there. That was an abortion. That was almost Israel, but not quite. Miscarriage. And that happens again. And here you can see it, for example, in the children of Nahor, also and the children of Ishmael as well. Although that's a little bit of a different story. What's that? It's also 12. In other words, what's happening here is that the Torah is trying to give birth to the 12 tribes of Israel. It's trying to give birth to the 12 tribes of Israel, and it's telling us why it's failing and why it's succeeding. And we have to learn from each of the failures about why it is that there was a miscarriage in an attempt to create Israel that didn't work. And the first attempt to create Israel is Hevel. Cain veHevel. What is Hevel all about? U'etzon. He's a spiritual leader. He's the mechanech. He's an educator. He deals with ruach. What is Cain? How do I know that it deals with ruach? Hevel. What's Hevel? Hevel, it's vapor. Cain, what's Cain? What is Cain? Kaniti. What's Cain? Kinyan. Material goods. And what does he deal with? He deals with working the land. Right? Now what should happen is that Cain and Hevel are supposed to be 2 sides. Cain, who represents like this kind of material emphasis in life. Hevel, who emphasizes the ruach, right? The spiritual. They're supposed to be working together. Hevel is supposed to train Cain as the educator, but Hevel failed. He failed and he was killed by Cain. He was slaughtered by Cain. He did not succeed in educating Cain. So what's next?
We're done?
No, let's wait up. We got a bunch of generations before that. We actually have 10 generations from Adam until Noach, and then 10 generations from Noach until Avraham. But what happens then is that Adam and Chava have another child named
Seth.
Shet. What is Shet? Shet, Tashtit, like a basis. It's a new beginning. And this one is going to end. Shet is the new Hevel. It's another tribe. It's like go number 2, version 2.0 of Hevel. And let's see if he succeeds. Now, after that, the Torah teaches us that there's these genealogies of Cain and genealogies of Shet. And I just wrote them down. I jotted them down just to make sure. The generations of Cain are Chanoch, Irad, Mechuel, Metushael, Lemech. And then watch what happens. Lemech has 3 sons. What are their names? Yaval, Yuval, and Tuval-Cain. What does that sound like? Yaval, Yuval, and Tuval-Cain. They're the attempt of Cain to create a synthesis between Cain and Hevel. An attempt to create a synthesis between the material and the spiritual. It's an attempt to create the synthesis between the two. And what does it say about Yaval is the head of Mikneh, like he's the guy who deals with economics. And Yuval is the one who has music, with culture. And Tuval Kain, what does he do? Weapons of war, metalworking, technology. What are all these things? This is the heart of Kain. What does Kain represent? What does his line represent? His line represents civilization in the material sense. Okay? What is he? He represents the Ashir. Ashir, right? Yeah. Richness, Ashir, like rich, being rich. Okay? That's what's emphasized in the Muslim world. Shet, on the other hand, his first son is who? Enosh. Enosh is the father of religion. The Chazal don't look favorably upon religion, but he's the father of religion. Here we have again the spirit, ruach. Okay? You have Mahalalel, you have Yered, Chanoch, Metushelech, again Lemech. All this, almost the same names as Kain. They're two like parallel worlds. One is based in materialness, material goods, and one is based in like the spiritual, chokhmah, wisdom. But again, what we're trying to create is the prophetic, the prophetic identity, Islam. And we said there's one thing that's missing. What's that one thing that's missing? We have the Ashir, who's like trying to become a little bit Chacham. We have the Chacham, who's trying to become a little bit Ashir. And what's missing? The Gibor. What is the Gibor? The Gibor is the ability to be able to combine, to be both Chacham and Ashir at the same time. What's the problem? Is it a problem to be Ashir, to be rich? No. If that's what you put your mind to, you can do it. If that's all that's important to you, you can do that. You will succeed in building like material goods, you'll succeed. If all that's important to you is, what's that? Well, you might be mixed up and try to mix it in with like with spiritual quality. Like if you only care about spiritual quality, if you only care about chokhmah, you can become a chacham. Where is the trick? The trick is to be able to put the two together. That's what's unique about Hebrew civilization. That's what's unique about prophetic culture, is the ability to put together chacham, the ashir. And who is that person that's supposed to be able to put together chacham and ashir? What's that?
The Jacob?
Well, then also later is the Gibor. The Gibor, the mighty, is the one who's able to put them together. Now I want to read you guys real quick. This is like a satum verse that that everyone like reads over really quickly, so that they don't have to deal with it, because it's like really smacks of idol worship.
The verse?
The verse itself, yeah. You'll know it in a second. Here we go. Okay.
Isn't this week's Parshas Noah?
No, it's the end of Bereshit. And it says, Vayi ki echel ha'adam la'rov al pnei ha'adama. Right? When people started to be multiple on earth. Uvanot yuldu lehem. And they had daughters. Vayi'u b'nei ha'elohim et b'not ha'adam tovot hem. The children of Elohim saw the daughters of man, and they said, well, looking good. And then what happened? ויקחו להם נשים מכל אשר בחרו, ויאמר השם לא ידעו בני האדם.
And they become Giborim.
And then what's born?
The Giborim.
Right. ענפים היו בארץ, ועמהם וגם אחרי כן אשר יבואו בני, and then after the children of Elohim, what are the children of Elohim?
The rich people. That's what Rashi thinks, I think. Judges or something?
Well,
Judges.
As opposed to the daughters of man. Elohim he was created in Tzelem Elohim. And who's that? Shet. The replacement of heaven.
Okay.
In other words, the line of Shet, the sons of the line of Shet.
We're trying to marry the daughters of Cain.
And they came to Benot Adam, the daughters of he who is man, working the ground.
So that's
Cain. In other words, what is happening right now?
Isn't that Noah's story though?
Wait, what happens next? Wait, and who is born now? וילדו להם והמה הגיבורים. ואחרי כן אשר יבואו בני האלוהים, the children of the Elohim. Who are those? The children of Shet. Who is the last person in the line of Shet that we hear about? Noach. Noach is who is he? The Ben Elohim. El Benot Adam, and he marries someone from the line of Cain.
Yeah.
And who is that?
Nama,
the sister of Tubal Cain. In other words, what we have here now is finally the synthesis between Cain and Hevel, the synthesis between Ashir and Chacham, Vehema HaGiburim, and that's the Gibur. And now what do we have here? We have the Torah synthesis. Who is the synthesis? The children of Noah and Naama. And who are they?
That's everybody.
Shem, Yefet, and Cham. Shem, Yefet, and Cham are this new identity that's born. And the minute that the new identity is born, what can happen to all of the previous rough draft? Mabul. Noach is a tzaddik, right? Now, is it good to have a tzaddik in the generation, or is it bad to have a tzaddik in the generation?
Classic.
What's that?
It's a classic.
What?
Whether Noach was really.
No, I'm not talking about that. Well, is it good to have a tzaddik in the generation, or bad to have a tzaddik in the generation? It's good. Only that the minute that a tzaddik comes to the generation, Adam at Noach, 10 generations, Noach comes around, all of humanity is wiped out. 10 more generations, we have another tzaddik. Avraham Avinu. During his time, what happens? Sodom and Gomorrah are wiped out. We have huge catastrophes, destruction of mankind. Why is it that when the tzaddik comes, that mankind has to suffer? Why? Because the tzaddik all of a sudden raises the level of the expectation of the generation. All of a sudden, there's like a category, a prosecuting witness in the heavens that says about the generation, you guys could have been like Noach, but you weren't. And now now you got problems. You could have been like Avraham, but you weren't. And now you have problems. And that's why it's the job of the tzaddik to pray for the well-being of his generation, because he is the cause of the suffering of his generation. The tzaddik actually causes the suffering of his generation in the fact that by him being a tzaddik, it's an automatic accusation towards the rest of the generation. Why couldn't you be like him? And so it's the obligation of the tzaddik to take care of the generation. There is again a dispersal of these characteristics among these three human identities, that the Torah now wants to tell us what's going to happen to each of these identities, and they go out and they start to create the 70 nations of the world, right? In other words, there's this dispersal of the human identity, this new human identity that's really a synthesis of Chacham, Gibor, Ashir, that at its heart has the synthesis, but now it's dispersed among the nations, right? Those are the 70 nations that come to being. And on the background of that, we have one of the children of Shem. And one of the children of Shem is Evel, right? Evel, we know two things about him. Evel had two sons. Shem Echad Peleg, one of the sons' name is Peleg. Why? Ki b'yamav niflaga haaretz. Because in his days, what happened? There was the dispersal of nations. Niflaga haaretz. The dispersal of nations, like that's where we get the word miflaga from. Miflaga is like the sections that are all cut apart. In his days, all mankind was dispersed in the Migdal Bavel, the Tower of Babylon that fell. Rashi says about this, the Midrash says about it. What do we know now about Evel? We know that he was a Navi. Why was he a Navi? Because he called his son Peleg, because he knew that later on in his life, there would be the Tower of Babylon. So he was a Navi. And number two, what interests Evel? That there was the dispersal of mankind. Like that's something that's meaningful to him. And you can see from the children of Peleg afterwards, right? Who are the children of Peleg? Reu. What does a Reu mean?
To see?
No, that's
Friendship.
Friend.
Reu is
Like Rhea.
to bring together, right? To bring together. And who's the son of Reu?
I don't know about
No.
like a long name.
Sahug.
That's
I'm mistaken, correct. I don't see it.
And Arpish
Sarug,
or
what does sarug
something
mean?
after that.
Kippah, suga, something that's knitted together.
Yeah.
Okay? What interests this family? What interests this family is putting mankind back together. Okay, what interests this family is putting mankind back together. And that's why Chazal, even though it can't be chronologically, according to how the Torah tells us, that Avraham was alive at the period of Mikdash Bavel, where the Torah of humanity was dispersed. What Chazal does is it places, historically, Avraham in the generation of Mikdash Bavel. Like he's fighting Nimrod, right?
Yeah.
He's juxtaposed to Nimrod. Because the job of Avraham Avinu, is to carry on the Hebrew mission. The Hebrew mission being with those two primary aspects of prophecy and unity of all mankind, that being the primary idea. We want to unite mankind back together. Okay, that's the Hebrew.
But so that's exactly what they were trying to do in Migdal Bavel.
Yeah, but
No, but that was uniformity,
Yeah.
as opposed to unity.
So let's see, what does it say? Dvarim achadim.
Yeah.
What is Dvarim achadim? You had to talk about all but the same thing. Okay, uniformity is bad. Unity is good. Well, every empire that tries to conquer the world, that's what it's about. Like anytime one of the 70 nations tries to rule over the world, even if it talks about like multiculturalism, even if it talks about diversity, what it really is doing is saying, be just like me. Like that's what the ancient Babylonians did, that's what the Persians did, the Greeks did, that's what the Romans did, that's what the Americans did. That's what, some in more subtle ways and some in more overt ways. Those are the things that end up happening. Okay? Now, what is unique about Israel's mission is that by us asserting ourselves, if we're really asserting ourselves as who we are we? It says in the Gemara, I think you are that accumulated identity that's called Adam.
Yeah.
Not a specific aspect of Adam, but you have everything in you. When you asked why is it that the Jews have a piece of Germany and a piece of Africa and a piece of Persia and a piece of Russia and a piece of America inside of them, we basically took all these pieces and we brought them back to the land of Israel, right? And now we have to put them together into one whole. Right? Like if you take all of the nations of the world and you put them into a blender, what do you get? You get a Jew. Asher b'chabanu mikol hamim. He took a little piece of each of the nations of the world and put them together. That's a Jew. What is that? That's that identity that's trying to be created from Sefer Bereshit through Sefer Parashat Noach, through Lech Lecha, Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. There's that last clarifications. Avraham as Yitzchak and Ishmael, and Yitzchak as Yaakov and Esau. And that last clarification comes to Am Yisrael. What is the unique universal vision of the Jewish people? It's like the United Nations, but different. What the United Nations does with ties and with fancy speeches and actually doing nothing and with actually a bunch of corrupt powers and money, okay, which is like kind of a klipa, is what the Jewish people are doing in our life. The nation of Israel has people from Europe, from Africa, from Asia, that have gone and taken these treasures and brought them here. And what happens is when we have, like, for example, fights between, let's say, a Moroccan Jew and a Russian Jew, what's actually happening is you have a Moroccan goy and a Russian goy fighting it out through two Jews. That's actually what's happening, okay? And through life, we're actually putting together a different identity, and that's the struggle right now, because we're not clear who we are. And some aspects of our identity are more dominant right now because they're more dominant in the world. So, for example, the Western aspects of our identity are more dominant right now because they're more dominant in the world, and those aspects. And so, part of our correction and part of us performing our mission, part of us being who we're supposed to be, has to be to empower those Jews who have, as a part of their identity, aspects that are non-Western. The seasons also play an important role, and the moon, and that is actually the more exact definition of how we define our calendar. Whereas the moon is like kind of, you got two Jews that saw a new moon, okay, run up to the Sanhedrin, testify, should today be the new moon, should tomorrow be the new moon, It's something that's in the hands of man. The moon is in the hands of man. The sun's not in the hands of man. The sun is. Okay, there's a whole bunch of different aspects, and it just depends what you want to emphasize, but they're both there.
And the sun, the moon is just reflecting the sun.
That's correct. All these things are true. We have to go into it a lot. Also, but that's also, we have to understand that that's the Western Hemisphere. We didn't even talk about the Eastern Hemisphere at all. We also have a lack of Eastern Hemisphere. Most of the Jews, for the most part, have wandered throughout the Western Hemisphere. Correct? In other words, we've wandered through the Islamic world and the Christian world. But what about the Far East? But that's not a part of the world. They don't have anything to say.
We lost those Jews. I don't know. There's some Jews from India.
There's a few. Right now we're compensating for that, and we have Israeli soldiers who, after the army, they go travel to India because we have a lack of those things over there. And then they go to Japan and India and Thailand, and they bring those treasures into the game too, because that's important. But there's a reason why that is. The reason why that is a secret that I don't know if you guys noticed in Parashat Bereshit. There's, how many days are there? Bereshit?
How many days?
6 days and then
Wrong.
Shabbos.
Wrong.
It's like 14.
8 days.
No, wrong. There's 3 days. There's 3 days that repeat themselves. What's created on day number 1?
Light.
The light. What's created on day number 4?
The sun and the stars.
Light in motion.
It's a same.
Light in motion.
Each correspond.
In light. And day number 2, what's created on day number 2?
Water in the sky, and then.
And what's on day number 5? Moving water and sky. In other words,
The fish and birds.
and so what is, the first 3 days is the Eastern Hemisphere. The last 3 days is the Western Hemisphere. The first 3 days is the Eastern Hemisphere where there's no motion, right? Where how do you get to nirvana? How do you get to perfection? How do you get to perfection? By nullifying yourself, by being nothing.
Being rather than doing.
It's being, right? As opposed to the Western Hemisphere, which is both the Islamic world and the Christian world. How do we perfect the world? We're moving. We're always in motion. And what is the Jewish answer to all that? Shabbat. What's Shabbat? It's moving in order to rest.
So,
Or no, it's the 6 days of the week and Shabbat.
Shabbat,
Yeah.
Nafash, what?
Yeah, both aspects. The 6 days of the week are the aspect of the West, and then Shabbat is the aspect
so you're
of
saying
the
you're moving in preparation for Shabbat, or like moving and getting ready, and then you rest?
It's all one. It's all part of one whole.
It's all part of one. It is one whole. There's motion. There's the time of work, and the rest. What's central? There's the 6 days of the week inside the Shabbat. They're all good. But in any case, what I wanted to say is that the Jewish people, I think there's a big question in the Gemara there. How can you be called man? But the other nations will call man. And Rabbi Meir says, no, look, we see like even a goy who studies Torah can be like as great as the Kohen Gadol, and it's like sounds like a very racist thing to say. And Tosfot brings there, and they say, no, you weren't exact in your reading. Adam as a name of someone, like I call you Rafi, but the nations of the world are called Ha'adam. They're expressions of particular pieces of the human identity, just like I would say, if I was to say, I call you Rafi, or I could say that Rafi, the Rafi, right? There's something that I'm like, I'm relating to you almost like as an object, like a piece of what you were. So the job of our generation is to express the way in which mankind can become united, not in a uniform way, but united, and to correct the failure of Hevel and Cain in their attempted synthesis, where Cain ends up killing Hevel. Like, we fail if we get slaughtered. We fail if we get slaughtered. Like Hevel failed when he was slaughtered, right? Our job is to be Hevel who is fixed and can educate Cain.
Yeah.
And so now the question is, how do we do that? So I was in a meeting today, actually, earlier, where there's an idea that hopefully we'll do. There's like a lobby, we're going to set up a lobby in the Knesset. It's just one little tool where we will have representatives of the different nations of the world come and meet. We'll arrange meetings in the Knesset. We might have some of the Knesset, some of Banim, and parts of Israeli society as far as where we see it's appropriate, we need to set up like 70 yeshivot where each,
70 meetings.
or not meetings, but real sitting down is discuss the problems, like a nation of the world and people of Israel sitting down together and discussing like the problems, find out who they are, and clarifying their identity and what each nation's purpose is in this gigantic organism that's called humanity.
Isn't that theoretically what like the consulates are for?
That's theoretically what they're for, but in
But-
actuality what happens is that we act
We
like,
just pander to them.
what's that?
We just
We
pander.
pander to them, or we talk about the economic issues, or we try. We're not fulfilling the spiritual role of the educator that we're supposed to be.
But if we
fulfilling.
like went to those countries and was like, let's talk about like how you're gonna be part of this symphony, like they would laugh. Like they wouldn't take that seriously.
No, I don't think that's true. I think that used to be true, but that's what the Rambam says, that both Islam and Christianity have paved the way, even if they have problems, they've paved the way for the knowledge of Mashiach in each of these cultures. In other words, that the knowledge, they can't laugh because that's already a part of their mythology.
Do they believe it?
Some of them believe it, some of them outright reject it and hate it, and what we're experiencing today is the reaction of like nations of the world to how they respond to that myth that's already inside of them. Some people hate it, and that's like where we get this tremendous amount of hatred of the state of Israel.
Wait, what myth are you referring to?
You're
Sorry.
saying the myth of the Messiah being Jewish and stuff like that? That's why the Arabs and everything else?
No.
No, not the Arabs. The what?
The myth of the centrality of the Jewish people and the Jewish kingdom really in correcting the world. Okay? Like
Yeah.
that's a myth. Like it's a myth. It might be true. I
Yeah.
think it's true. That's what our prophets talk about. That we have a specific role. For example, the fact that the Jewish people, when they come back, the prophets, they talk about the Jewish people coming back to the land of Israel. That event is tied to a whole chain of other events that are supposed to take place at that time. There's supposed to be a change in the world order. There's supposed to be peace on earth. There's supposed to be all these things are supposed to take place as the Jewish people come back to the land of Israel.
Right.
Okay? And now the Jewish people have come back to the land of Israel. And that sets off associative censors for people who have been exposed to this story. Whether you believe it or don't believe it, doesn't matter.
Right.
But that's the story. Like if I tell you, what's her name, Snow White and the Seven, you complete it in your mind.
Yeah.
Snow White and the Seven what? Dwarfs. You know it's dwarfs. You're thinking dwarfs. So too, the idea of Jewish people coming back and reestablishing a Jewish state in the land of Israel,
Yeah.
that rings a bell.